Honorable Mr. Sergio Gutierrez Luna, representatives, authorities, and guests present, the Mexican people. The first official records of anomalous phenomena in Brazil date back to 1560, when Father José de Anchieta wrote the Letter of São Vicente to describe the nature of the country recently discovered by the Portuguese. In the letter, Anchieta talks about beings from the forests, called curupiras, beings from the rivers, called ipupiaras, and luminous phenomena called boitatá. All of these phenomena would be responsible for persecuting, injuring, and even causing the death of indigenous people. Inexplicable facts that occur to this day in the Amazon and are investigated by the Brazilian government, as we'll see here today. Since the end of 40s, several cases began to be reported by the media, and in 1952, the first photos of a flying saucer-shaped aerial vehicle were released in the country. A case investigated by the then Colonel João Adil de Oliveira, designated Chief of Commission of Investigation into Flying Saucers, which declared in a lecture on the subject in 1954, given to the High Command of the Brazilian Armed Forces, that the subject of flying saucers is serious and deserves to be treated seriously. During the same lecture, the first case of UFO incursion into a Brazilian military base was revealed, when two silver spherical objects spent approximately 3 hours over the Gravataí air base, as well as the first case of UFO pursuit of a commercial aircraft. Between the end of 1957 and the beginning of 1958, several military and civilians aboard the Navy ship Almirante Saldanha were able to observe a strange metallic-colored aerial vehicle making revolutions over Trinidad Island. In 1968, the number of cases of sightings of phenomena in Brazil was so high that the Brazilian Air Force created the Unidentified Aerial Objects Investigation System, called CIONI, which had the collaboration of civil organizations and encouraged the participation of university students and volunteer observers. The teams were made up of around 4 military personnel who carried different types of electromagnetic radiation measuring instruments and investigated cases involving anomalous vehicles of the most varied formats and also their crew members. Analysis of collected materials were carried out at the Aeronautics Technological Institute and also in laboratories in the United States. After the change of command of the 4th Air Zone, responsible for leading CIONI, the program was deactivated. In 1977, a new investigation by the Air Force was carried out at the request of mayors of cities in the states of Pará and Maranhão, as panic had gripped the population of around 40 municipalities that were being successfully visited by strange aerial vehicles which fired luminous beams that caused various physiological effects on the residents. The Air Force chose the city of Colares to begin an investigation called Operation Saucer, which was commanded by then Captain Uranger Holanda. According to Holanda, it was possible to identify at least 9 shapes of objects, some of which were approximately 100 meters long, that moved in and out the rivers of the region. In the drawings made by the military, it's still possible to see a type of vehicle with a panoramic window containing 2 beings, which was witnessed by the only physician in the region, Dr. Velaide Cecim, as well as by other residents. Operation Saucer produced around 2,000 pages of documents, 500 photographs, and 16 hours of video, and was suddenly closed by the Air Force Command at the end of 1977. When visual and radio contacts between the phenomena and the military began to become increasingly intense. Soon after the end of Operation Saucer, in April 1978, Minister of Aeronautics Joamir Macedo recommended the creation of a confidential database about UFOs. In June 1978, 14 military personnel and 5 civilians witnessed strange phenomena that occurred in a newly opened radar detection and telecommunications station in the country's capital. noises and the visualization of shadows in the vegetation, sudden opening from the electric gate, stones being thrown to the roofs and towards the military, and silent, multicolored luminous bodies standing at low altitude over the station. Some rifle shots were fired by the military towards the shadows in the vegetation and the UFOs, and regarding this episode, Minister of Aeronautics Sócrates Monteiro declared, "I decided to interrupt shooting as they have much more advanced technology than ours and we don't know how they will react." In 1986, Brazilian airspace was invaded by multiple UAP that flew at low altitude over several military and strategic installations in the country and began to be monitored by the Air Force, which sent 5 fighter jets to try to pursue and identify them. The pilots reported that the phenomenon anticipated their maneuvers, caused interference with their equipment, and could remain static or accelerate to speeds of around Mach 15, and had the ability to fly information alongside the fighters, one of which was accompanied by 13 objects. Military flight controllers even reported the existence of a mothership that was accompanied by smaller objects. In an unprecedented way, the Minister of Aeronautics, General Moreira Lima, called a press conference with all the pilots involved to confirm the veracity of the incident and state that there was no explanation for the phenomena observed. In January 1996, witnesses from Varginha, state of Minas Gerais, reported seeing strange humanoid beings with red eyes that exuded the odor of sulfur or ammonia, followed by military operations and intense movement in the city's hospitals. The only official document made public was an investigation by the Brazilian arm led by Lieutenant Colonel Finholt, which concluded that the alleged being was probably a physically disabled person, well known among the local population. To explain the intense movement in the hospitals, spokesperson Major Causa stated, "There was a couple of dwarfs and the lady was pregnant. This coincides with the fact that the sergeant's school caught this creature, put it in the truck, and took it to the Varginha hospital." Recently, new witnesses broke their silence and decided to talk about the case. The Brazilian Air Force officer, Marcos Feres, said that during the incident he had to allow a US Air Force plane to enter Campinas Airport, the closest to Varginha, without authorization, and that shortly afterwards helicopters were sent to the city. Colonel Olímpio Vanderlei, who supposedly commanded the operation to transport the beings, denied his involvement, but declared that he believed that the presence of other beings on our planet has always happened and will continue to happen ever. Neurosurgeon Italo Venturelli declared after a silence of almost 30 years that he watched the video of Varginha's humanoid underwent a surgery at a hospital in the city. In 2008, the most fantastic case involving the direct testimony of military personnel ever recorded in official documents released in Brazil took place. While the local population reported numerous sightings of luminous phenomena in the city of Cláudio, also located in the state of Minas Gerais, military police officers Lieutenant Austríaco, Sergeant Valdir, and Sergeant William chased in a vehicle 2 luminous beings that were floating among sugarcane plantations. Everyone felt physiological effects during and even after the event. In addition to the beings, the police also saw UAP that were spherical, silver, or the color of red-hot iron, and showed absolute deceleration and change of direction, moving like ping-pong balls from the sky to close to the ground. In 2020, I obtained from the Brazilian government the release of more than 120 pages of documents and 20 minutes of videos that proved that spherical and cylindrical UAP were flying light beams at indigenous people in the Amazon, more specifically in the state of Acre, bordering the Peru, between 2014 and 2016. This phenomena also had close contact with anthropologists and culminated in the hospitalization of an indigenous man who became unconscious after firing dozens of shotgun shots at a phenomenon that had descended close to the ground. To conclude, most of the cases I mentioned are registered in the National Archives of Brazil, which has thousands of pages of documents related to this phenomenon. However, we know that the most compelling documents, such as the Operation Saucer videos, were never released. Furthermore, documents that do not belong to the Air Force obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, such as some of the cases I mentioned today, are not sent to the National Archives due to lack of legislation, which prevents the existence of a centralized repository on the subject in Brazil. These phenomena are happening now. Last month, I was in the northeast of Brazil, where happening cases of persecution of people by luminous phenomena and inexplicable mutilations of animals. In all these cases, there is one thing in common. The purely intelligence and national security approach cannot provide an explanation or peace of mind for these communities. It's necessary to complement it with a scientific approach free from social and religious stigmas. Therefore, today I make the same recommendations to my Mexican friends that I made at the request of the Brazilian Senate. It's necessary to create a research body made up of military and civilian personnel that centralizes the collection and analysis of data on these phenomena and that serves as a link of transparency with the population. I also recommend holding the first meeting between representatives from Mexico, Brazil, and other countries to discuss this issue that has potential to transform our humanity. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I would like to inform you that all the official documents released by the Brazilian government and discussed today are available for you to be part of this hearing files. Muchas gracias.